morning we'll talk a bit more about meditation proper, but right now I'm going to talk about devotion. And devotion is part of the Zen practice. It surprises people sometimes, but it's actually quite a large part of the practice. And if you think about it, doing nothing but sit there facing a wall and looking at your inner life is the greatest act of devotion you could possibly come up with. Because you're devoting your time and all of your being, you're doing nothing else to this mysterious thing of just sitting there. A lot of people have trouble with the word devotion. They think it sounds too churchy or something, but actually it's what people do all the time. It's a way to express our love. It's a way to express our generosity. It's a way to encourage ourselves. And it takes prescribed forms because a lot of the time it involves other people. It can involve an activity, like if you're devoted to being a sports athlete or something, you're going to devote your life to that. And it means a lot of things. It means you're giving up your social life. It means you get on a special diet. It means you spend a lot of time of the day doing prescribed activities. It means you wear funny clothes. And all of that just in order to become a football player or something like that. And people admire that. And people do that voluntarily. Now, if you put it in the context of spiritual life, all of a sudden it's weird. But we do exactly the same thing. We adapt our social calendar so we can go to a retreat. We wear funny clothes. We eat at prescribed times, or we eat different kind of food. And we do things together as a group because that helps us fortify our sense of practice. It's quite difficult to keep up a spiritual practice all by yourself, all the time. It really helps every now and then to come together. Just as when you do a fitness program, it really helps to every now and then go to the gym with other people and a trainer. And I sometimes compare going to a retreat to going to the gym. You got all the stuff there to do the exercises, and there are a few other things you can be doing while there. So it is beneficial. And then you go home and you carry on practicing at home. The various forms that spiritual devotion can take. And first of all, like I said, is to just spend time with your practice. Do that quite by yourself. You spend time to meditate. You maybe spend some time reading, studying. You spend some time going to group activities. And then in the group, you do various things together. One of the things is to make your practice place beautiful. And beautiful is something else for different people. So it's a personal thing. But if you make it beautiful in the sense that it moves your sense of it being special, it being precious, then when you look at it, that feeling gets reinforced. If you have space at home to make a little home altar, you can use that to reinforce your sense of practice by putting things on it that invoke your sense of wanting to do it. everybody has home altars. They may look differently. They may look like a big television. Or they may look like a cupboard with pictures of the grandkids. Or they may be a shelf in the kitchen with all manner of chocolate on it. Those things actually are altars. And so when you make your home spiritual altar, it doesn't have to have a Buddha picture on it. It may if you like that, but it doesn't have to. It can have something else. A friend of mine has a beautiful photo that came through NASA of some kind of celestial, I think it's a galaxy somewhere way away, and it is just so beautiful, and it inspires awe, and it makes you want to just spend some time there, be with that. Once you have such a little place, you can then, number one, maintain it. And maintaining your special spiritual place reinforces your bonding with it. Anything that you have at home, if you look after it for a while, you begin to bond with it, whether you like it or not. That just happens. And so if you maintain it, you keep it clean, every now and then you change it, you make a bond with it, and then when things get difficult, you have something familiar to go to rest in, to be comforted by. You can then just sit with it, or maybe you clean it again, just to kind of make it nice. Sometimes we use an altar to put things on that are difficult. Because if you do that, you recognize for yourself that I find this thing difficult to accept, but I'm going to make it part of my spiritual practice to not reject it. So I'll put it on there. It can be a memory, it can be an event, it can be a hurt that you have. On occasion, when people come to me and they have some very painful memory and they really want to stop being angry about it, then after working with them for a while, sometimes I recommend they put that memory in a rock. And then they carry that rock with them for a while, put the memory in there, and then when they're ready, they take a walk into the hills on the temple grounds and they put that rock somewhere on a little shrine. Or they maybe just throw it away. It isn't magic. And what you have to do is see that as a symbol of your willingness to let go. And if you do it properly, then you also have to walk away from it and not keep going back to it. And it can be very helpful. Another thing you could put on a shrine or an altar is something you find really difficult to accept. But you have to be careful there. You have to also recognize that sometimes you're just not ready to accept something. And then time is needed. People often forget that, especially when something is difficult. You just want to be done with it. But you can't always. We all need time to work on things and digest things. And there's a very beautiful story that talks about this, which many of you may know, but I'm going to tell it you anyway. So in the time of the Buddha, there was a girl, young woman, who had a baby and it died. And she could not accept that. It was just too much of a pain for her to accept that her little baby had died. And she kept carrying it, and people said to her, you need to put it down, it's dead, forget it. And she kept saying, no, somebody can help me. Somebody has to do something about this. And that still happens these days. When something dies unexpectedly, you want to do something about it. So nobody could help her. So in the end, they said to her, you should go to the Buddha. And she went to the Buddha and said, my baby isn't right. Can you help me? And then the Buddha did something that often people kind of overlook. He gave her time for grieving. He didn't say right away, well, everything's impermanent and just accept it. He did not. He said, yes, I can help you. And you need to go and find some mustard seed in a home where nobody has ever died. And she felt relief. There was something she could do. And she said, oh, right, I'll do that, thank you. And that was so skillful because he prevented her from despairing. If he would have just had said, you need to accept this, it wasn't working. So he gave her time. And she went around and said, people, can I have some mustard? And they said, of course. And then she said, well, it just has to be from where nobody's ever died. And then they said, oh, sorry. Somebody died here. Our grandmother died or something. And then they talked with her about that and they shared the memory. And then she kept going and she went to the next house and to the next house. And by the end of some time, her grief had softened a little bit and she had had the opportunity to see she wasn't the only one. This wasn't an unnatural occurrence. Other people were showing their support and their care and their love for her. And by that time she was ready. And then she was able to put her baby down and went back to the Buddha. And then she was able to hear the teaching about impermanence. So we need to do that sometimes with ourselves or with others. When people are going over something and they just can't seem to stop. You can't just say, can you just get on with it already? You have to allow for time. And that is also a form of devotion, is to allow your own body and mind to work things through. Put it on your altar when you're ready for it. Another part of devotional activity with a group is to just spend time together doing something. Often that is having a meal. People will go out and have a meal together because that reinforces the sense of family. Nothing particularly gets discussed or sorted out. It's just spending time together. Sometimes people go see a movie. Sometimes people make music together. And that's one of the things we do, is we chant together. It's, you can say, just a way of spending time. It's useless. But what else are you going to be doing with yourself that's better? And then we pick what we chant. And chanting is a very human activity. Every protest march has chanting. Every sports game has chanting. Every religion has chanting. And so if you pick the words for your chant that you find inspiring and helpful, then you do two things at once. You also sort of reinforce what you want to know or what you already know. So we chant scriptures and verses, and sometimes contemporary songs that are written by people who practice Buddhism. You ever heard of Hang Sure? You heard of Hang Sure? He writes pop songs. And they're funny, and one of the things about singing is it actually helps your memory, and it's often easier to sing something than to recite it. And it can cheer you up. And then by cheering you up, it reminds you of something to do. So there's lots of different positive results from doing something like singing or chanting. It also physically, when you do chanting, has an uplifting effect. And that is because you do have to breathe better than when you're sitting still. I remember when I was a young monk, we would have these hour-long practices, because all this, you need to learn all this stuff, so we would have to sing, and it was usually at the end of the day when you're already tired, and I would think, not another choir practice. And we would have to do it over and over and be wrong, and we have to do it over. But every time I went through that whole hour, I would come out of it energetic and feeling good and thinking, yeah, singing. So it does have that effect to your body, and you might remember that when you feel down or you feel a bit low. Just sing something. If nobody is watching, dance around a little bit as well. The other thing that you're doing is you're telling yourself something and then you're hearing it. If you read a piece of spiritual text, it comes in through the eyes. If you listen to a Dharma talk, it comes in through the ears. If you say it yourself out loud, it comes in through your eyes and your ears at the same time, and you actually get a stronger effect from doing that. And people know that. When you're studying something and you try to memorize it, you may say it out loud a couple of times and it works better. It just has that effect. Or I have found at a few occasions where I actually was scared to do something, that I would talk out loud to myself and do it. Just keep going, Phoebe. Just one foot in front of the other. And I listened, because there was nobody else to encourage me, so I encouraged myself by saying something. So all of those various things are reasons to incorporate some form of chanting or other in your practice. In Zen, what we try to do, because meditation is 24/7 and penetrates everything and is at the foundation of everything, everything we do actually becomes a spiritual act. Washing dishes, putting out the compost, talking with each other, all of those things are not outside of meditation, and they all can become a way to express our desire to be one and to do good for others and to be of use and to appreciate the fact that we are alive. Buddhism has a little bit of a negative reputation of, everything is impermanent, nothing is real, and we need to let go of our attachment, and we need to not be attached to the physical attractions of things. Zen isn't quite like that. Zen actually says, yes, attachment is a bit of a problem, but that doesn't mean there is no beauty. And the earth is quite beautiful, and our bodies are quite beautiful. And life is enjoyable some of the time. Not all of the time, but it actually is. And if you only focus on the pain of it all, then you just end up being despairing or very dour. So make use of the times when things are light enough and beautiful enough that you can do an expression of that. Do some singing or some other activity that honors that, and then pay attention to that. So, if you grab your book, at this point, clock has stopped. That's a spiritual sign. So I'm going to explain to you how chanting is done in my particular practice. Does anybody here read music? Good, because you don't need that. If you go to page 21, actually no, let's go to page 30. It's better. It's the evening office or vespers. It's what we did last night when you got to just sit there and listen to it. Tonight you're going to chant along. And if you look at the printed text, just the letters, Adoration to the Triple Treasure, you see there's a vertical line after triple. And in the next sentence there's a vertical line after com of compassionate. You see those? Now all the words before that vertical line are sung on one note. And after the vertical line we do a little doohickey. And there's only 2 lines, and we repeat those. So anybody here who has reasonable intelligence, by the time we should be halfway down it, you should have gotten it. And so we're going to try this out. I'm going to sing it by myself, and I'm going to simplify it a little bit. So there will only be 3 notes. So I'll go like this. Adoration to the triple treasure. Adoration, that's too low. Adoration to the triple treasure. Adoration to Kanzeon, who is the great compassionate one. Om to the one who leaps beyond all fear. Having adored him, may I enter into the heart of the noble adored Kanzeon. You get that? Sing along. His life is the completion of meaning. It is pure. It is that which makes all beings victorious and cleanses the path of all existence. Oh, sorry. O thou seer, world transcending one, O hail to the great Bodhisattva. All is defilement, earth. Do the work within my heart. O great victor, I hold on, to Indra the Creator I cry. Move my defilement, free one. Come, here a joy springs up in me. Now just you. Speak, give me direction. Awakened, I have awakened. O merciful one, compassionate one, of daring ones, the most joyous hail. Thou art all successful hail. Thou art the great successful one, hail. Thou hast attained mastery in the discipline, hail. Thou hast a weapon within thy hand, hail.
Thou hast the wheel within thy hand, hail. Thou who hast the lotus, hail. Hail to thee, who art the root of eternity. Hail to thee, who art all compassion, hail. Adoration to the triple treasure, hail. Give ear unto this my prayer, hail.
You are good. Excellent. Now the thing is to not be scared to be heard and put a bit of effort in your voice. Do it wholeheartedly, because you never know when the electricity goes out and all of a sudden it's just you. So tonight we'll turn the light up a little bit so people can read, and then we'll play the tape. There is 4-part harmony on the tape, so it's a little bit more involved, but we don't need to do that. That's when hour-long choir practices come in, when we do the bass part and the alto part and the tenor part. We'll just do this. So that was very good. Okay. Sip of water. And then what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about what this actually all means. This is a prayer. It says so at the very end. And sometimes that's another one of these words that has people a little bit allergic. We don't pray. I pray a lot, and I think prayer in Buddhism could be said to be a declaration of intent. Sometimes it's a wish, sometimes it's a expression of what direction you want to take. Sometimes it is an expression of gratitude. It's not ever really asking for a bicycle. And if it is an asking, then it is good to be for the asking to be open. And my teacher used to say, when you're asking with a pure heart, no is as good an answer as yes. And so you may get cancer, or you may know somebody else who has cancer, and you might say a prayer for them to be well. And that's completely legitimate and very human. And people in research have found that actually, even if they don't know about it, if they're being prayed for by other people, they have a better sense of well-being. But it may be spiritual well-being or emotional well-being, and not necessarily jumping out of bed and not being sick. But it does work. My father was a great example. He didn't believe in any of this. And he got sick once, and my sister told me, he was in Holland and I was in America. And I said, I'll get all the monks to pray for him. And he didn't believe in any of that nonsense. And then he got better and life went on, and he got sick again. And he says to my sister, can you call up Phoebe? He still didn't believe in it, but he did feel something. So that is a form of prayer as well, as long as you're not holding on to a particular outcome. Because if you do and you get a different outcome, you might be disappointed and not see the good that is in the other outcome. So all of those are forms of prayer. When we dedicate our life for the good of all beings, that is what I call a prayer. So this is a prayer to the Bodhisattva of compassion, Avalokiteshvara, Kuan Yin in Chinese, and Kanzeon in Japanese. In Chinese, the full name is Quan Shi Yin. If you say that a little funny, you get Quan Kanzeon. That's the Japanese form. And we start off with adoration. Adoration is a greeting or a blessing or a form of respect. First of all, to the triple treasure of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. I'm assuming you're all familiar with that. No. The Buddha can be the historical Buddha, the teacher who started all this Buddhism stuff, unbeknownst to himself. It can also refer to your own Buddha nature. That which in you that is part of the whole universe and that everybody is born with, intuitively we know. If we wouldn't know at least a little bit of it, we wouldn't be seeking for it. You can't seek for something that you don't even know exists. So we pay respect to the Buddha, to our own ability to meditate. We pay respect to the Dharma, which is the Buddha's teaching. And then we pay respect to the Sangha, which are the people who understand and practice the teaching of the Buddha. And the word Sangha, the use of it fluctuate. Originally it meant only the 500 most advanced students of the Buddha, and then it became a little bit bigger. Here in America, everybody wants to be part of the Sangha, so this is a Sangha. Bhikkhu Bodhi very kindly said, the word Sangha basically means group. You can have a Sangha of dogs. So, if people feel happy being part of a Buddhist Sangha, then that's it. But when you take refuge in the Sangha, you actually limit it a little bit to people who really are wise, according to you. So then you're wise. And then we pay respect to Kanzeon, the Great Compassionate One. And the Great Compassionate One is not a celestial being. It's not an angel or a saint. You could say more that it is the energy form of the universe that is compassionate. That points us to wanting to do something about ourselves. That invites us to look more deeply. It's not an external thing. Compassion comes out of our own hearts. And when we call on Kanzeon or we call on compassion, we're not sitting there waiting for some being to come and be compassionate to us. We try to evoke compassion within our own heart. And so then, when we do or say or think something compassionate, we've answered our own prayer and compassion is present. And sometimes it comes in the form of another being or of an animal or of a guardrail by the side of the road that prevents you from flipping over the edge. But unless you have it in your own heart and are willing to express it and give it reality, you might miss those things. So, like with many of these things, they are a bit of a circular event. You call on it and then you have to embody it yourself. You can't sit and wait there for something to happen. Om to the one who leaps beyond all fear. Om means peace, right? And it is another form of greeting. And the one who leaps beyond all fear with the capital O is that compassionate being inside of ourselves. And right at the very beginning, it talks about leaping beyond fear. And when you sit down to meditate, Sooner or later, that's what you have to do. It can be pretty daunting. It can be as small as another half hour, really? That's kind of scary. Or a whole retreat, or really to face your own inadequacies and to face the things about yourself that really need a little work. Requires being willing to go beyond fear. But like with everything else, it's not necessarily instantaneous. You don't have to leap beyond all fear all at once. You might take little baby steps. And you also might... Are we out of time?
Just keep going.
You also might have to take several goes at it. If something is difficult inside yourself. You sort of approach it, and you go into it a little bit, and then you go, "Ooh, no, I don't think so, not today." That is okay. Go back, do some more sitting, talk to somebody, go for a walk, and have another go at it. That's how we get beyond fear. It takes several attempts. The other thing about it, it is not a once-in-a-lifetime event. You go beyond a certain kind of fear, and you think that was great. Now you have a nice little time, but you will not live happily ever after, like they say in the fairy tales. And sooner or later there'll be another one, and you have to face that one. So that's our life. And here comes that circular thing again. Having adored Kanzeon, or the Bodhisattva of compassion, may I enter into the heart of it. And when I enter into the heart of it, I evoke it in my own heart. The life of compassion is the completion of meaning. The meaning of our life as a human being can take various expressions, but this is one. The life is pure, it makes all beings victorious, and it cleanses the path of all existence. In other words, the power of compassion, of the force of compassion, clears our way for all of us, for everything. And we help with that. Sometimes just by sweeping the sidewalk, and sometimes by not causing difficulties for other people. Sometimes for finding ways for other people to be the best they can. To not worry them, to not upset them unnecessarily, to encourage them to be who they are, and to encourage the good in them. All of that is part of the universal way things are, and it's part of how we practice. And that is the thing about Zen, is that we don't wait for an enlightenment, a fictitious enlightenment that is somewhere else to be reached. We start right here where we are to live it. And that may not be perfect. That doesn't matter. We do our best. Om to the seer, the world transcending one. Kanzeon, the Bodhisattva of compassion, is the one who sees where help is needed. And we ourselves, when we meditate, can begin to see in our own self where things need to be let go of, and what our direction can be, and what the way is that life really is, which is really, in the end, what we're trying to achieve, is to see things the way they truly are. Easier said than done. Transcends the world, doesn't despise the world, actually is rooted in the world, but also transcends it. That is the great Bodhisattva. Then comes this moment of darkness that we all know from time to time. You get to this place where everything is dark. All is defilement, earth. And when we say defilement, we mean confusion, obstruction, obscuration, fear, dark thoughts, harmful behavior, all of those things. They all are defilements. One of the people in my temple is a very kind and caring person, and he is very much into loving the earth and practices green activities and works with recycling and all that, and loves the earth. And he really, every time he reads that, he gets upset. It says defilement, earth. He says the earth is not a defilement. And he feels very strongly about that. And so I had to talk about that a little bit and say, well, it's a little bit like when you're driving in a car and you get mud on your windscreen. It's not that the mud in itself is bad. We don't say the earth is bad. But when you have a lot of mud on your windscreen, you can't see where you're going. And that is why we say earth defilement. It's the mud. Then you can take that analogy a little bit further and say you spray it with the water of compassion, and then you use the windscreen wiper of wisdom, and then you can see again. He didn't like that. And then we say, do the work within my heart. And if you remember rightly, you'll say to me, and you just said you have to do it yourself. And so I did. So this is one of those declarations of intent prayer, where we ask for something greater than ourselves to help us do the work of purifying our own heart. And then we do it. We get on with it. And it actually does work. I don't know how, but it works. And then comes here a little bit that shows you that this particular bit of writing is very old, and it goes back to the time when Buddhism was in India. And so we're crying to Indra, the creator and the great victor, as an expression of forcefulness. We're crying out. These days you might say, oh my God, or mama, whatever it is that you give force to your, I'm really in a pickle. I want to do something, and so you call that. And in these days that was Indra, but we're not actually really calling on the god Indra, because none of us are Hindus, I think. Anybody? No. But if you see it, yeah, you call on Indra maybe, yeah? And that's perfectly fine. It's an expression of that, of I'm serious, I'm in trouble, I need help, I'm called on something big. And we ask for movement. The defilement-free one is Kuan Yin, or Kanzeon, or that part of us that knows better. And part of you often knows better. That's the interesting thing. A lot of the time we do something that is a little bit harmful, and part of us knows better. And we do it anyway for some mysterious reason. Which means you really don't really know it just yet. Because once you really know it, you will not do it. But for most people, there's that in-between time where that part of you that is pure, that is cosmic, that is divine, that is Buddha nature knows. And it sticks up its little hand and it says, wait. And you go, I need this. But eventually, if you swat it down long enough, it will shut up. And then, you have a life that spirals and is very difficult and whatever. But if you start listening to it, it will become stronger and it will actually help you. And so we ask for that to move inside of us and to inspire us. And then when it does, we get all happy and excited and we feel a sense of joy, which also does happen. And now we are encouraging it and we say, speak, give me direction, I will listen. I will listen. Something says, don't do this, do that. I'll go, okay. And the more you listen to it, the clearer it will become. That is an interesting thing about this. And at that point, you can honestly say, I have awakened. We have lots of little moments of awakening. And every time you follow one of your wiser impulses or you follow a moment of kindness, in that moment you have awakened to that. Doesn't mean you're fully awakened just yet. There's more, but it also is not to be sneezed at. And when that has happened, the sense of joyfulness and of gratitude begin to mix. And then you get this whole long list of various descriptions of the power of compassion. And they are all listed basically out of enthusiasm and love. It's a bit of a love declaration. It's like if you love somebody really very much, you will start telling them all these particular things about them that you love. And so that is going on here. Joyous, successful, has attained mastery in the discipline that is spiritual discipline of sitting and of following your heart, listening to that little voice. It says here in the translation, has a weapon in thine hand, and I think sometimes to myself I would maybe say tool instead of weapon. Because that in our particular day and age, that sounds more productive and less scary, and us Americans are very easily scared. And so the point is not that it is to scare you, but the point is that there are tools, and many tools could be used as a weapon and vice versa. So if that sits better with you, you use that. The wheel with the capital W is the wheel of the Dharma, or the Noble Eightfold Path, that Buddhist symbol that has the 8 spokes. That's that wheel. The lotus in the next sentence is the symbol of enlightenment. Compassion is the root of eternity. That's what I started saying at the beginning, that energy force that permeates the universe, or maybe even is the universe, which is compassionate. And then we turn right back to the beginning, and we end up by paying respect to the triple treasure. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha, which is, if you've paid attention, you've noticed we do that just about at every turn. Is there anything in here that needs more clarification or that struck you? You have permission to speak. Yeah?
Can you kind of explain passion versus compassion? Because, yeah.
Well, they're two very different words. They have the same root, but they're used in very different ways. You know, how they kind of grew apart. And compassion has a certain amount of feeling to it, but the way we use the word passion is usually more on an emotional level and more easily out of control and a strong force. And it is often self-directed. It's not always wrong. You know, you can be very passionate about this, that, or the other. And if this, that, or the other is a good thing, then your passion about it is good. It easily slips over into a little bit too much, and then you get into trouble. If you care too much about something, then you open yourself up to disappointment or frustration, and that's the beginning of anger, actually, or despair. Compassion, literally, it means to feel with. Com is with, not .com, but communities, togetherness. So to feel with. But the meaning of it has over time shifted to meaning a mixture of sympathy, understanding, and love. They all are part of compassion. And compassion has to always be accompanied by wisdom to make it true, to make it stable. Compassion without wisdom can easily become just feeling sorry for somebody. And that's not quite right. Compassion with wisdom will respond in an appropriate manner, whereas feeling sorry for somebody doesn't always. There's a very nice story of one Buddhist monk, a Zen monk, who goes out to collect firewood out in the woods, and he's doing it all day. He's got this big bundle of firewood and he's very tired. He's on his way home, and before he gets home he trips and he falls and he bloodies his knee, and all his wood falls apart and it's there in a great big heap. And one of his friends, the monk, comes by and sees him lying there. He's crying, his knee is hurting, and the other fellow sees him lying there and he sits down next to him and he starts to cry also. And then number one monk looks up and says, "What are you doing?" And he says, "I'm helping." That's not the kind of helping that we need, right? That's not compassion and wisdom. That's feeling sorry for somebody to the point where you're just useless. Wisdom, on the other hand, without compassion, is a little bit too dry, right? And that's not always helpful either. So you have to find the balance and the mixture. And usually we're a little bit off. And that's okay. Because like we said earlier, wisdom, wise discernment, comes from experience. And experience comes from bad judgment. So to find that place in between, that is true compassion. And it might, because of the addition of wisdom, it might not look all that compassionate. In our little story, if the friend would have just said, "Right, here, I've got a Band-Aid, let me help you pick up this wood," he doesn't have to go, there, you poor person. He can just pick up the wood and be done with it. And that is compassion. Does that make sense? That was a good question, by the way. So then, where are we in time? There's an hour. I'm trying to see what exactly was going to happen here with my life. All right. Do we need a little stretch?
Yeah.
Stand up. Take 5 minutes.